Right. So this webinar marks the first of the Environmental Law Program's Climate Justice and Resiliency series. And I'm so glad to be talking about Pacific resiliency to climate change with our wonderful panelists. And today we have with us Professor Payam Akhavan, who serves as counsel to the Commission of Small Island States on Climate Change and International Law, Kato Ewikia, who is a climate activist from Tuvalu, and Solomon Yo, who is a climate activist from the Solomon Islands and also one of the 26 law students who founded the Pacific Islands Students Fighting Climate Change in 2019. So we are so grateful to have you all with us. Welcome. And to our audience, if all goes to plan, we should have some time for questions and answers. So please do feel free to message ELP Research Associate Evan Miyake, and we will do our best to raise your questions towards the end of our discussion. So in October of last year, University of Hawaii William S. Richardson law students, including myself, had the special opportunity to attend the United Nations Climate Change Conference, also known as the COP26, and meet with environmental activists, lawyers, scientists, UN ambassadors, and more. And it was on this occasion that I was introduced to the work Mr. Akhavan was undertaking with Tuvalu, and where I first befriended Kato and met Solomon in person after many, many months of working together virtually. So it was, needless to say, a joyous occasion. And so without further ado, let's dive in. My first question is for Solomon. So Solomon, again, is a climate activist from the Solomon Islands. He currently serves as the organization's campaign director, and the Pacific Island Students Fighting Climate Change are currently campaigning for a UN General Assembly resolution on seeking an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice on Climate Change and Human Rights. So Solomon, so good to see you. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about how Pacific Island Students Fighting for Climate Change came to be, and what are you fighting for, and who makes up this group?
Thank you, Naima, and good fellow morning from Solomon Islands. It's really hot and humid as always here in Solomon. Just to answer your question, Naima, so the organization started in 2019 when a group of law students from this international environmental law course, this is our final year, we wanted to go out with a bang, of course, as all law students would like to do. We have managed to think that through our studies, we've come across repeatedly the issue of human rights, but then the first time we're hearing the nexus between human rights and climate change. And we're very concerned about how this is it's really, I mean, from this lens, when dawning on this lens, we're seeing that this is, of course, taking place very widespread in the Pacific for a very long time now. After thoughtful consideration, we thought about issues that we're trying to address here in the Pacific or solutions that we could take, but everyone seems to be pointing out the same direction, that no matter what we do here as much as we can in our respective countries, the problem, the smoke that started this fire did not came from our islands. It came from somewhere far, far away. And it really needs to start addressing the issues from the tap, or the root causes, root places where this problem is coming from. And sad to say this, but developed countries mostly. So we're thinking about how we can see the role of law can play. As law students, we are thinking that how can the law can be a useful vehicle that could bring about transformational changes we need to address this geopolitical problem we're facing today. So we got together, we delved into a lot of research on how we can go through some solution. We came across this interesting issue, this campaign that the Palau government has raised in 2011 to trying to seek an advisory opinion through the UNGA. So we've done a lot of research on this and think that this is something that we could revive again, pushing forward to the Pacific Island Forum leaders in particular, and to get the leaders to start initiating the process again. So this is how the organization came into be, where we wrote a lot of letters to our leaders and thinking that forwarding that encouraging them as well take forward this initiative. We also did approach since we're based in Vanuatu, the law school was in Vanuatu. We paid a visit to the Vanuatu government and explained the whole situation of our research. And then we said it would be great if one of the countries in the Pacific Island Forum, 18-member country, the Pacific Island Forum, could table this in the upcoming Pacific Island annual leaders meeting, which at that time was in July, around August in Funafuti, Tuvalu. So the government did, Vanuatu government did raise the campaign there, the proposal by the students, and it was noted positively by the leaders in the leaders communique. But due to the pandemic issues, it came to a hiatus for the time being. So apart from that, the organization, we decided it really needs to continue this campaign to reach a goal. So we formed this organization where students from all across the Pacific are joining. We managed to create 4 chapters, one in Solomon Islands, one in Fiji, one in Vanuatu, and one in Tonga, where members meet and also advance the campaigns and activities of the organizations to the respective chapters. So mostly university students. It's not really only just law students, but of course other university students of other academias and other young youths as well who wanted to do something for a change on this climate issue that we're facing. Hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Solomon, for taking us through that so thoroughly. You talked a little bit about this, but sort of the idea that the polluter pays, and it's time for the polluter to pay, and it's time for that sort of climate justice to be manifested. My next question, if he's available, is for Mr. Akavan, because you've talked about this principle where the polluter should pay, or at least assist with some of these small island states and other countries in the world that are grappling with climate change effects first and worst. And I'm wondering if you can tell us about your work with some of these small island states, specifically with the Commission of Small Island States on Climate Change and International Law, which I believe was formed on the first day of COP. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Commission and its goals, as well as the work that you'll be doing at Council?
Thank you, Naima. Aloha and greetings from Montreal, where it's minus 20 degrees. And I expect that next time I will be in Hawaii in person, where it will be slightly warmer. It's a great pleasure to intervene briefly in this panel, and I regret if I must have to leave after my intervention. But as you mentioned, Naima, on the first day of COP26, the prime ministers of Antigua and Barbuda and Tuvalu concluded the agreement to establish the Commission of Small Island States on Climate Change and International Law. And on November 4th, the Republic of Palau, the president of Palau at COP26, also became a party to the agreement. The agreement is open to all AOSIS members, and it's anticipated that several more will be joining in the coming months. Now, this is truly a historic agreement because it brings together small island states in order to engage in collective legal action against the major polluters. Now, those of us who have been involved in the COP process know the very unfortunate history of attempts for small island states to raise the issue of loss and damages. And in fact, this goes back to the very founding of AOSIS around 1990. And of course, it was 2 years later that the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change was adopted. And ever since 1992, up until the 26th Conference of Parties in Glasgow, the major polluters have ensured that the question of loss and damages will not be seriously considered. And even in respect of the fund on loss and damages, which was promised in 2009 to the tune of $100 billion, which today would be really a negligible fraction of the actual loss and damages. Even that fund has not materialized. And we know that the Paris Agreement in Article 8 very consciously and deliberately avoids the issue of liability. Now, what's unusual or perhaps predictable is, as you put it, the basic principle in international law is the polluter pays. If you go and you dump toxic waste off the coast of a state, then you must pay to clean it up. We have the famous Trail smelter case, which was a smelter in the town of Trail, British Columbia, which was spewing noxious fumes across a chimney factory into Washington state in the United States. And this case goes back to 1938, where an arbitral tribunal established the principle of due diligence, that you cannot allow your state to be used in a manner which causes harm to others. So the question is, why are these long-established principles not being applied to greenhouse gas emissions? What is so special about global warming that it cannot be considered as any other form of pollution would? So in effect, the small island states are speaking truth to power by invoking the power of international law and the potential of litigation before international courts and tribunals, not to do something really revolutionary, but simply to apply established principles of international law. The only revolutionary aspect of it is that it could begin to change the conversation at COP in the future, because after 26 years, small island states are tired of vague commitments and empty promises. And how do you speak about compensation for loss in respect of Tuvalu and Marshall Islands and Kiribati and Maldives, countries which are virtually going to disappear? Very briefly, I wanted to note that, of course, Vanuatu currently has an initiative to request an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice. And that, of course, requires a majority vote of the UN General Assembly, which is a political body. And of course, it is a struggle to get a majority vote, given that the major polluters, not just in the global north, but also in the global south, are not going to be enthusiastic about any discussion of liability. But the Commission of Small Island States, which supports Vanuatu's initiative, has opened a different front, and that is requesting an advisory opinion from the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, which was established under the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, adopted 10 years before the UN Framework Convention, which in Part 12 has very exacting obligations on states to protect and preserve the marine environments. And of course, for small island states, the preponderance of the harm that is caused by global warming comes through the warming of the oceans, whether it's rising sea levels, ocean acidification, coastal erosion, coral bleaching, the loss of biodiversity and fish populations. So this now opens a second front that small island states can exploit in order, at the very least, to have an authoritative pronouncement by international courts and tribunals of what the applicable principles and rules are which should guide future negotiations. And I will just end by saying that, as one of the heads of state told me at COP26, what have we got to lose by trying? What have we got to lose by instrumentalizing international law? Because international law is the equalizer between nations large and small. And in the coming years, we sadly are only going to see a deterioration of the situation, and contemporaneously the increasing importance of making these basic principles of international law part of the conversation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Akavan. It's so interesting to hear about this new commission, and I remember chatting with you a little bit about your inspiration for taking on this initiative, particularly as counsel to one of the small island state representatives, Tuvalu. What brought you to this area of law, and what inspired you to engage in this way?
Well, that's a very good question. I guess I have a penchant for getting into trouble. And in a previous life, I was a UN prosecutor at The Hague, dealing with crimes against humanity and genocide. And I've been a human rights lawyer, actually, not so much an environmental lawyer. But of course, now we realize that without the environment, human rights are meaningless. Our very existence, our human right to life, our right to health, all of those fundamental dimensions of our very existence are at stake. And I felt that it would be irresponsible of me and anyone else who is in a position to contribute to this cause to be a spectator at this time. And I truly think that we are at a historical turning point where we have to fight for our collective survival. In a sense, it's remarkable that the small islands are speaking really on behalf of all humanity. This is not about small islands fighting other nations. It's about the small islands awakening the major polluters, letting them know that what is happening to the small islands today is going to happen to the rest of the world tomorrow. So to me, this is an epic David and Goliath contest. But more importantly, it's about our collective survival. And maybe I'll just end with the words of Arnold Toynbee, who famously said, "Civilizations are not murdered, they commit suicide." So our corrupt consumerist culture, which glorifies greed, this materialistic way of life, has brought us to the brink of collective destruction. So getting back to your question of why I'm doing this, because I want to leave a planet in which my children and their grandchildren can live in. And it's a great honor really to have spoken to some of the leaders from the small islands, in particular, Prime Minister Natano of Tuvalu, who I found deeply inspiring in his profound understanding of our place in the universe and why speaking truth to power through the persuasive force of international law is intended really not to be any act of hostility against other nations, but really a wake-up call for all of the leaders that come to these COP conferences, make very charismatic speeches, but ultimately do nothing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Akavan. It sounds like you have a very full schedule, and so we are so grateful for your time and for the thoughts and insights you've shared with us today. It's been a pleasure hearing some of your points today, and we are excited for questions and look forward to seeing news about the opinions get lost.
Thank you very much, and I regret that because of unforeseen circumstances, I cannot attend the entire panel and benefit from all the other speakers who seem wonderful. So thank you very much for this invitation and very best wishes in your endeavors.
Great. Next time we'll have you in Hawaii. But in the meantime, we'll turn to Kato, who is joining us from Tuvalu. And he serves an assistant to Tuvalu's Minister of Public Works and is the director of Saving Tuvalu, which is a grassroots organization that seeks to address the humanitarian and environmental crisis in Tuvalu. So it's wonderful to see you, Kato. I wondered if you could start off by telling us about your journey to the COP26. What brought you to COP26 in the first place? And what were your thoughts when you arrived? What did you hope to take back with you to Tuvalu?
All right, aloha everyone. Aloha. I believe Naima gave a brief introduction about me. I just want to add on. This campaign that I'm working with is a youth-led campaign. We're all youths. We do this voluntary. All of the students that I'm working with are all in high school, and I believe I'm the the oldest youth in my campaign, and this campaign that I'm working with, they're all the youth all around the world. Some youth that joined in my campaign left because of work and family sacrifices. So right now, I'm the only one who's working and under COP26. Sorry, Saving Tuvalu, and it was my team one of my team in Mexico. Uh, he led me this invitation to go to COP, and then I was really privileged to go. Unfortunately, my country was on lockdown because of COVID, and thankfully the ambassador of Australia had a trip to Australia. That was an opportunity for me to go to COP. So I asked her if I could hop on her plane to go to the COP, and she agrees, and she also agreed that I won't have to pay for anything. So it was a good opportunity as well, thanks to the Australian Embassy. And so I left. I haven't been to those really big countries in the global north. It was my first time. I was overwhelmed with everything. I I left here in Tuvalu with my t-shirt, with my short pants, and flip flop. If you don't know what flip flop is, the kind of, I think you guys call it jandals. So yeah, I left those from here to Tuvalu to go to the cup. I didn't really expect that Europe was really cold. It was really cold. It was my first time experiencing a very cold weather. So and I traveled from here to the COP26 in Glasgow for 3 days. So I was in the same clothes for 3 days. I'm really shy to ask for to take a shower if there's any shower because I met some difficulties on the way with the securities. And yeah, so when I arrived to COP, when I arrived to COP, met some really friendly youths around all over the world, and um, I was with Fridays for Future, and I was wearing a garland. If anyone has seen me in the picture, so we were supposed to do other activities, but then uh, that garland, the culture garland that I was wearing, something with flowers on my head, kind of caught the attention of some of other interviewers, and also gave me the opportunities to share my story here in Tuvalu. So I did a lot of interviews. To be honest, it was my first time interviewing in public, and sometimes I get shut down and couldn't get the message right because I was really nervous. And then along the way, I became comfortable, and like I could get my message right. So I went to COP, and then I told about the interviewers about the climate crisis that's been happening here in Tuvalu, about the sea level rise, about the drought, and also how we were able to survive, and how they were asking if is there why don't you guys migrate to they were giving us the interviews was giving us some solutions, but then if you leave your home and you go somewhere else like forever, you don't feel home anymore, and you won't able to have that experience to share the feeling that you had with your children, like a Professor Cavani, if I'm right. Like he said, he wants to be in the planet where it's safe for the children and grandchildren. That's how I feel as well. I want to pass on to my children the same skills that I was doing here, fishing, doing the garland, the dancing. It won't be the same if I go somewhere else. So I've been telling interviewers in Glasgow that it might be an option for us to leave, but that's not the solution to all of this. Uh, just leaving because of the climate crisis. Because right now we are still living. We still have the chance to solve the problem of the climate crisis. So with everything that's been happening here in Tuvalu, and also I mentioned in COP26 that some of our few islands, not only in Funafuti, but also in Nuku'ulai, there was an island in Nuku'ulai. The islands has disappeared because of the cyclone, and then it wiped some of our small islands away. And those small islands were our conservation area to sustain the things that's living there, to breed, let them breed. But then now it's all gone because of the cyclone. So I went to COP and also tell them that remind and like to the world leaders, if they're living in a good life, while the people who are not responsible for this situation are suffering the most and suffering the consequences of their doings, which is not right. And also I went to COP to find solidarity. Is it how you guys pronounce it, solidarity? Okay, yeah. So I went to COP to find solidarity and partners to work with, so that our voice can be heard. And also I went to COP to not to to feel my, how do I say this? Like I don't want to put myself like trying to look for help. No, that was not the main picture why I went to COP. I went there so that we can work together with the whole world, because we all live in the same planet, and climate crisis and natural disasters don't have limits. It will destroy. It may destroy Tuvalu or whoever. It won't. You guys. No one can stop the climate crisis. So I went to COP26 to find partners so we can solve the solution while we still can, while Tuvalu still exists. And made new friends in COP, faced some security problems as well, which is okay. Thankfully, I got back safely. It was a tough journey for me. Staying away with my from my family, for a while, with people I didn't know. It was a really new experience for me, but yeah, that was my journey on when I went to COP26. I flew from Glasgow to London, and then I faced some security problems. Got stuck there, and then I came to Fiji. I got stuck there for more weeks. I arrived since November. I came here on Christmas. It was a very long journey, but yeah. But because I'm doing this because I love my country, I don't want to lose my country, and I don't want to migrate anywhere. And yeah, so yeah. I'm gonna close up with our motto of saving Tuvalu. If you save Tuvalu, we will save the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kato. Yes, I remember chatting with you after COP had ended, asking if you had gotten back home, and it had been a week since COP had finished, and you were still waiting to get back home from Fiji. So it was indeed a journey. But I have more questions for you, especially about that motto and about the work that you're doing at home with Save Tuvalu. But for a moment, I want to turn back to Solomon and ask you just a little bit about, you both are working with youth, primarily in island states. And I'd love to know what some of the hurdles are that you've witnessed throughout this campaign with Pacific Island students fighting climate change. And how have you generated or tried to generate support? Has there been success?
First of all, thank you, Kato, for the very inspiring intervention. Always with you all in solidarity as well. As for your question, Neymar, with regards to the hurdles that we face along the way, there are a lot of hurdles that we come across. I think when Dr. David came over to Vanuatu when we started the organization, he's probably arrived to a group of naive and ambitious students, but with zero experience in activism or zero experience in campaigning for particular particular initiatives like this. So it was really a baptism by fire, this whole initiative. We learn as we go. And of course, we learned a lot of things the hard way. But nevertheless, we try to improve every time as we come across these hurdles. So going through a lot of public speaking and trying to convince stubborn politicians, those things are, of course, first time for many of us in the organization. And organizing, more importantly, organizing events. It's a lot of weight that we have to pull around. And one frustrating thing as well is the hiatus by the COVID pandemic that has brought about disruptions in the Pacific Island Forum, because that's where we wanted to have the leaders to vote to initiate the progress on this. So it was a bit of a disappointment that COVID has brought about and has really affected the organization's chapters in terms of doing activities that we wanted to do to advocate further on this campaign. I think awareness, also awareness on this campaign is very difficult because it's a very legal campaign. Sometimes it gets lost in translation if you're trying to convince local CSOs not really attuned to the legal aspects. So therefore, we try to try to hold our patience in most of these times, and often try to be creative as we go along and try how do we translate the legal language into more simplified and context-specific experiences that our targeted audiences might have affiliation to, that help them, to enable them to understand better the campaign from that perspective. We do manage to, I think the big part of the organization strength in overcoming a lot of hurdles is the support that we're receiving from Pacific CSOs and individuals like Dr. David Foreman and people elsewhere in the world who are really supportive of the initiative of the youth on this particular campaign. So many gratitude as well going to the Pacific CSOs, because they really help us, the Pacific and Vanuatu CSOs, they really help to set the fertile ground in which help the organization youth to grow on. And their constant backing has managed to advance the campaign, not just in the Pacific region, but else throughout the world through their respective networks as well. So it was really helpful, and it didn't stop. It just continued to this day as well. I think outreach campaigns along the way has also helped us to build capacity, where partners follow trying to give us to build up capacity building for the organization, so we can advocate effectively a message throughout the world. So those small things like that helps along the way. But at the end of the day, it's really how the young people, our passionate young people, feel the passion of wanting to do, take on this campaign to address. And I think that is really toxic in terms of how the world see it, in a way that it creates an encouragement for them to help provide assistance for the young youths who are, to overcome these hurdles as well. So it's very it's ongoing learning and improving, as I mentioned earlier. So yes.
Yes, and this campaign is tackling many issues at once. You know, youth empowerment, climate justice, and you know, I noticed while Mr. Akavan was talking about the ITLOS advisory opinion, you know, you both are engaged in initiatives that are seeking advisory opinions from these international bodies. I'm sure you've received this question before, but how would an advisory opinion from the ICJ lend itself to the enforcement of environmental treaties in the South Pacific? How do you see that playing out at home in Vanuatu? What would happen once you receive an advisory opinion if all went well?
Thank you, Naima. I think that's a central question that everyone wants to know. What will happen if we get the advisory opinion? And this really has to be very depending on the legal question that will be put forward to the court. Depending on the legal question, because it is only through a United Nations General Assembly route. If you want to seek an advisory opinion, only a state can push this through to the ICJ or request an advisory opinion to the ICJ. So it is up to the states to also formulate the legal question that will be put to the court. Now, as to the legal question, that's the responsibility of governments in the Pacific to do on that. But for the youth organization, I think we are really focusing. Our focus is really on the human rights aspects, human rights framing of the legal question, because we believe that the timing is really right for it. We're seeing now globally, even at COP26, you're seeing states continue to failing to the commitment on domestic and international obligations to avert, minimize, and address climate change. This is the consequences of this is that they're not only they're undermining the human rights of their own citizens, but also the rights of citizens elsewhere, people in Tuvalu, Pacific, elsewhere in the world. Ms. Payam has explained to the principle of transboundary harm. But now we are seeing that there's a strong consensus on this nexus between human rights and climate change, and that the fact that the widespread violation of basic human rights are being felt everywhere in the world. And this is getting picked up especially by courts as well. We can see this through the agenda in Netherlands case. That's really specifically highlighted this, and that was a great success. But we need, it's just one success that we need many of. For the Pacific, I can say for this that if you're living in the Pacific, you don't need the court to tell you this. You are living as a living expert. You'll see how human rights violations are violated every day by the adverse effects of climate change. So precisely what we're hoping the court to clarify on is the legal, the question that the youth have formulated and put forward to the proposal to the Pacific Island Forum in 2019 was that what are the legal duties under international law to protect the rights of the current and future generation? For instance, if this question were to be put forward to the court, the ICJ could consider whether the 1.5 degree target is now international law. And the implication of that is massive if the courts prove that this is an obligation. And further question could be explored as well, like what are the minimum actions the state could potentially take, and what measures state must provide to for the required remedies as well for human rights violation of climate change. If the court produces a favorable decision, it could really encourage parties in the Paris Agreement, as alluded by Payam, as international institution can play a role in that, in influencing the Paris Agreements. It will be able to encourage states, especially developed countries, to commit to a higher level of emission reduction, as well as providing the finance and technology transfer and capacity building for that the developing countries really need and are still yet to receive from developed countries. In addition, it could really bolster the mandates of human rights bodies, which can help identify what remedies will precisely be required when violation of human rights could occur. So then the list goes on of the benefits that we're aiming for. But the understanding is also that although the advisory opinion is not legally binding, it really carries this great legal and moral authority that applies to all UN member states. So a favorable opinion by the court could really catalyze the transformation of legal systems and policy throughout the world. And this is what we really were hoping to see the court could potentially deliver, and the benefits would roll from.
Wonderful. Yeah, so there would be this trickle effect from, say, the ICJ or from ITLOS that is also reflective of the needs and demands of the local communities and I guess the regional courts, and having an AO would help bridge that gap. Thank you. I'm going to turn back to Kato. I'm just keeping an eye on our time. And Kato, I would love it if you told us a little more about some of the work that you're doing with Saving Tuvalu at home. How are the communities, the youth, the families, leaders in the area engaging with this movement? And what do you hope the outcome of your efforts will be locally?
All right, thank you. So I'm gonna explain quickly on before we were a campaign. The founder of this campaign is from Mexico, and all of the other youth, they were willing to work with, Tuvalu and the citizens of Tuvalu, and also uh, they were trying to find a director of Saving Tuvalu, and I had no experience of being a director, like nothing at all. So on the way, it was a process, of learning, and I was trying to invite all the youths to come and join this campaign, and this campaign is not yet legalized, to be honest, and we were just kind of doing work like posting the problems that's been happening in Tuvalu, and also to find the solution. We faced some droughts last year, and uh, we were posting about the drought and what family goes through, and everyone were kind of like didn't, even in Tuvalu, like the people, like they didn't really like take serious of what we were doing, because we were just young kids, and even I don't have experience of being a director. But some youth also like kind of didn't want to join because we are not yet uh, legalized, and like we're just kind of doing this for the sake, to save Tuvalu. And when I went to COP, and after I returned from COP, everyone questioned me like, "What campaign are you doing? How come you're running this campaign?" And also, the personal assistant of a minister, like, how do you do it? I was like, "Oh, I just do it in my spare time. It's because I love my country, and I want you guys to to stay in a safe and a green environment and a nice planet." Uh, so yeah, the work that we've been doing here is mostly like advertise, sorry, posting online on Instagram, or the things that's been happening in Tuvalu, and how can we uh, how the world has a solution, to the climate crisis that's been happening in Tuvalu. So on this journey, I've learned a lot, and also getting confidence in speaking in Zoom. I've turned down so many Zoom interviews like this, because I was really nervous and didn't have the confidence. But then after I came from COP, I learned how to be confident. Yeah. So to answer your question, like what are we Saving Tuvalu doing? What work are we doing? Mostly we were just posting things that's been happening in Tuvalu, and everyone here is encouraging me to get this campaign yeah, legalized, and it's about to be finished. The government have already looked at our work and stuff. So yeah, uh, very soon Saving Tuvalu will be legalized here in Tuvalu. Thank you.
All the best of luck with that. I'm sure that on your return to Tuvalu from the COP, there was perhaps a greater understanding of the need for a campaign like Saving Tuvalu. I wish we had one more question for Kato. Maybe just really quickly, in your last sharing, you said that if we can save Tuvalu, we can save the world. Can you explain what you meant by this statement?
Yeah. So example, if Tuvalu disappears, climate crisis won't stop there. It might go to somewhere in the Pacific, small country states. And like if we start small, we can achieve bigger things. If we can start saving Tuvalu, we can save the world. And hopefully that my country won't disappear. And uh, sorry, I got distracted. If we, save smaller countries like ours, we can save bigger countries as well, because climate crisis don't have limits. It can, I mean, Australia had also, some issues with the climate crisis, the burning bushes, and kill so many animals. And for us to balance, that is a really big thing. Like we don't want to face those kind of crisis. And so, you know, as in the small states, small island states, if we can start saving and starting solving the problem of the climate crisis, we can save the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kato. And I'm sure that resonates with many of our viewers here from Hawaii who feel intimately connected with our Pacific Island brothers and sisters, and understand that this is not a siloed event at all, and that we are all affected by this, and we all have the obligation to respond in just ways. So we have one question from the audience, which is for Solomon. But before that, I'd like to thank our panelists, our wonderful panelists, for joining us today and for sharing their time and insights with us. It's been a pleasure to speak to you both, and to Mr. Akavan as well. So this question is again for Solomon. With appreciation for your humility, the viewer says, passionate young people like you, Belinda, Junior Kaloi, and so many others demonstrated quite a bit of sophistication during your efforts to conduct outreach with other youth around the world, as well as government leaders. Can you share a little more about some of those successes to date? And I apologize if I butchered that name.
Thank you for that question. Yes, I guess the hardest bit of the success of the organization that we are very proud of is that we did face a lot of moments in the campaign where we were really pushed to a comfort zone, out of our comfort zone. But I guess the determination for young people like Belinda, who is now the vice president of the organization, and as well as other members that we have who managed to swallow the pride and take on the bravery ship and overcome these challenges. So it's really hard for young people to really come out to do this kind of work. As I've said earlier, we are not experts in campaigning, no activists. We're really just thinking that we should do this just for the sake, as Kato has realized, because we love where we are at the moment. We love our people, we love our environments, we love being who we are in this region or small part of the world. So we think that this is worth saving. I think Payam has highlighted something that's really beautifully said. We're doing this because we know we have. It's not doing this for the sake of we will lose anything. But if we don't do this, we'll have everything to lose at the end. One of the key milestones that we have that we really hold dear to us is that we managed to get it through the Pacific Island Forum. I think that's a big step, but we do not want to see it end there. What we really want to see that it goes through the United Nations General Assembly to the court and then delivered as a opinion that can be utilized by people all across the world and catalyze more ambitious climate actions. So that's one of the key milestones that we see, but we hope to see that in a coming few months, I guess 8 months from now, when the UNGA will convene at New York in September, we hope to see that hopefully we'll get the simple majority, which will be hard, as Payam has highlighted, to be able to pass the resolution through to the UNGA General Assembly.
Thank you, Solomon. I'm just looking through the chat, and I wanted to put a call out there for any other questions from the audience for our panelists before we close. They've given us such rich information and knowledge to think about, and if there are any more reflections, then we'd be happy to share them here.
While you're waiting for something to come in, Naima, I'll just share with Solomon that I've been on some Zoom calls with Yule Schnakenberg, the World's Youth for Climate Justice, and she makes a point of saying that the Pacific Island students fighting climate change are the heart of that initiative. And for those that aren't aware, World's Youth for Climate Justice, including Pacific Islands students fighting climate change, received the Basil Paisley Youth Award last year for their advocacy. And so this is a very impressive group. And Kato, it's excellent to see you again. I think it was Charlene Chin that introduced you to me and to Naima. And so, these are some consultants around the world that have done quite a bit. And I, just wanted to thank you both for all of your efforts on the behalf of all of us and on behalf of future generations. So thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you, Professor Foreman. Such good memories. And I loved how, yes, I think many of us share our first memory of Kato at the COP26, having come straight from Tuvalu and dressed for Tuvalu weather. It's very endearing. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions, and we are scheduled to finish at 1. So again, I'd like to thank our panelists and to the Environmental Law Program and to the Pacific Island Legal Association for sponsoring this wonderful event. So this, again, is the first of the series, of the Climate Resiliency series, and there will be more webinars to come. And so if you received an announcement about this episode, you will likely receive a notification of the next one. Okay. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your days and your weekend, and Fafatai. Thank you. Aloha.
Hello, everyone, joining us.
Bye.
Kato, don't be shy about letting us know how we can, anything that we can do to assist going forward.
Thank you, Professor Foreman. I'll keep in touch in case if anything happens here and if we're looking for help. It was really my pleasure to meet you, Naima and Professor Foreman, and thank you for this opportunity given me to talk about my country, and also thank you everyone who's watching. In case if you guys have any Tongan students in your school, tell them that Tuvalu sends their regards and hope everyone is fine back with their family back at home. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We, the Pacific, we stand together.
Yes, absolutely.